So around 9 weeks ago, I launched my very first video podcast on YouTube. Kind of just went all in, didn't really know what I was doing. And I wanted to do this video just to kind of reflect on my experience so far, talk about some of my positives, my wins, the negatives, challenges, what I learned about myself, what I learned about the streamers that I were interviewing, and kind of what my next steps are for the podcast going forward and season 2. And so just for context, for anyone that's new here and hasn't watched the podcast is basically me interviewing streamers about like their growth strategy, their story, their community, different things that they do on stream and off stream to kind of help with them grow and their goals and all sorts really, just really getting to understand the streamer and who they are. So going into the positives first, I think one of the things that's really stood out the most for me is I think the podcast is actually really giving a great opportunity for the streamers to create a piece of content that they otherwise wouldn't usually create. And why that's good is because it's a piece of content that they could share with their community that hopefully just gives their community a little bit of a better idea to kind of what goes on behind the stream and almost appreciate how much hard work and dedication goes into maintaining a stream. And I think that's been a really strong factor with kind of helping me get streamers to want to do the podcast without really giving a huge amount of value on my side from a numbers perspective yet, hopefully one day. But yeah, that was kind of my first initial thought of the positives of running the podcast. And then from my own perspective, like in terms of like content, like I have so much content from the podcast, like I can clip it up into shorts to shorter YouTube videos. And so actually doing like the podcast in this format allows me to basically create lots of pieces of education, which was one of my main goals, was to talk to streamers, to ask them questions that I know lots of people are asking on communities, on Discord, Reddit, Twitter, get their answers and then use their answers to create video education. Because the one problem that I think that exists in the streaming education space is that there aren't many people creating content where like real life examples are being used of like how to grow. And so my goal was to actually get streamers who have been there and done it to deliver the education through the podcast. And hopefully that would then allow me to produce a lot more variety with different people, which hopefully would be more engaging. And then so the other like main point in terms of positives is like, I think it's like a networking standpoint. It's such a great opportunity for me to just meet lots of new people. And to develop my networking skills and relationship building skills and just get to hear streamers' stories, make new friends, and just build my name within the streaming ecosystem. I think that's quite nice. And so moving on to the negatives and challenges, where do we start? Let's go firstly, like scheduling. Like maintaining a constant pipeline of people to interview is quite challenging. Streamers are very, very, very busy, and I appreciate that. I understand that. So it means that I have to be super flexible with my time, and meaning that like I'm always available to do the interview, and I'll drop everything to do an interview if it means that like that streamer will commit to it. So I'm constantly just managing pipeline. Like if someone drops out, then I have someone to replace in so that I know that I've got enough content like and podcasts done to be able to push them out consistently, etc., etc. That's super challenging, and I'm just figuring out how to be better at that. And then actually, let me reverse that back. So one of the main reasons that I have decided to split my podcast into a season is primarily for my pipeline. So actually, if I split it into like 8 episodes, it means instead of like having to like continuously finding people for every single week, I can go, right, for season 2, I've got 8 people that I need to find. Here are the 8 people that I want. Let me do my outreach. So then once I've got them, rather than like having this like endless cycle of like who's next. I think mentally it would help me a lot more if I do it in seasons, like from that perspective. The other main challenge is just, you won't be surprised when I say that, it's just editing. Oh, it's not difficult. It just takes so fucking long. Just sat there like looking at I'm watching a podcast for an hour. They're quite long, an hour and a half, like, and I'm chopping up clips, and I'm still trying to work out an efficient way to do it, because like when I first started doing it and I was kind of ahead, I was like watching it, creating the clips as I was going along, And then I realized, oh shit, I need to do timestamps as well. I should probably include me doing timestamps as well. But then sometimes I didn't have time to do all of that because that's a 4 or 5 hour job. I just want to get the podcast done. So I wouldn't actually watch the whole podcast. I'll just know that, okay, well, there's nothing I need to cut out. I'll just get the intro sorted and the ending done, all good. Whereas now I'm like, actually, it probably is better that if I just commit 4 or 5 hours, watch it all at normal pace, or even just 1.5 times, and just do the short form, the long form, and the main podcast. And that means that then I don't have to revisit it again. I'm still trying to work that out. But yeah, editing is just taking forever. Another kind of challenge of the podcast is the podcast itself is so long. I just don't think it's going to get many views on the algorithm organically. I knew that from the start. So I'm really just trying to create the traffic drivers, which are the short form and the shorter long form clips. I think the shorter long form clips could do well, and something that I'm looking to improve for season 2 is to basically have a list of questions that I've researched on YouTube that people are searching for. So I know that people search for the common question of how do you grow on Twitch. So I'm going to make sure that like I have questions like that I know people are searching for, that I ask in the interview. So then I know I have that I can clip up, put into a YouTube video. It's then something that our people are searching for. Hopefully that'll do well on the algorithm and drive people to the full podcast. So a few ideas there. That's what I really need to do. Takes a bit of time, takes a bit more planning, but if I want the growth, then that's what I have to do, in my opinion, right now, until I have some more ideas. And then finally, the last kind of main challenge is just, there's a lot going on. Like the things that I've just spoken about, like I've reached their own challenge, but then add them all together and you've just got this one big challenge of just fucking shitloads of things to be doing and thinking about all the time. Scheduling, managing people, editing, coming up with new ideas, improving, making things better, etc. Like just, there's just so much going on. But I knew that. I stopped streaming because I wanted to replace my streaming time with something that was related to YouTube, and this is it. I'm fine with that. And actually, I was doing this many hours before with streaming and editing, so it's not too difficult. But I think that's why a lot of people probably start a podcast and then don't carry through with it because they just can't sustain the work output. And for me, I'm feeling pretty good at the moment. I'm still motivated, and I think my motivation reasons are strong. That's why I'm still pretty positive, and I'll just go into those now with the two main ones. Firstly, I'm doing this as like a portfolio builder to build my name in the ecosystem, which hopefully maybe might lead to opportunities of more professional work within the ecosystem related to live streaming, etc. Whether it's something to do with influencers or live streaming strategy stuff for businesses, etc., or something at Twitch. I'm not too sure. And so yeah, that's like one of my main motivations. And then my second one is that like I know this content is niche. I know that the audience is niche. I know that there are lots and lots of brands that want to advertise to this audience, and I know there aren't lots of YouTube accounts and TikTok accounts that have a niche streamer audience. And so I know that there's like, having spoken to other people that do similar things, I know there are really good opportunities to get sponsorship deals. And I think that kind of relates to like one of my number one goals is to get a sponsor for the podcast. I'm just trying to wait till I get my views up a little bit, and then I'll start looking for a sponsor. And hopefully once I get a sponsor, I'll then start outsourcing some of the more manual stuff like editing, so I can focus on leveling up the podcast and thinking how I can create better content from the podcast, etc. But yeah, that hopefully will come in the future. But for now, I'm basically just doing everything myself. So moving on to what have I found out about myself. It's been an interesting one. So I've never really watched myself talk to someone else. I've watched myself create content hundreds, thousands of times. Never watched myself have a conversation with someone else. And I've been told this comment before, is that like my face is I'm very emotionless, and I struggle to show empathy through my facial expressions when someone is saying something to me. Not because I don't feel it, because I'm not very good at showing it. And I noticed that when I'm watching my podcast, like someone was like telling me something really interesting and really nice, and I just look like I'm just bored as fuck, even though I'm genuinely not, but I look like I am. And so for me, like when I've been told this before, I'm like, well, I am interested. And yeah, but you don't look interested. So I'm trying to make some small steps to looking more interested, like nodding my head, like, yeah, like to just make it look like, yeah, I am more engaged, even though I am, but it's, yeah, okay. Second thing that I've noticed is that like I tend to ask my question too much. I've been told this before as well. It's just been great watching the podcast, because like lots of things that I've already been told, I actually can now see like a lot clearer. I ask a question and then I spend another minute explaining my question or telling them why I'm asking this question, when I don't need to. I can be a bit more concise with my questions, like ask the question, bang, stop. Rather ask the question and go, no, I'll ramble on. And so I've noticed myself do that a lot more. So I think I just need to maybe make a better list of being concise, so that like I'm not just like adding fluff to my question. But yeah, it's not a massive one, but it's just something I've noticed. And so what have I found about streamers? Well, in terms of the Twitch ecosystem, I think something that I already knew is that a lot of them are focusing on short form content, TikTok, to growth. Like we all know that's like a viable growth strategy. But actually, to my surprise, like I did speak to Yikes, who has actually grown through kind of community engagement and actually not used TikTok to grow. So I actually didn't really think that was much of a viable strategy, but clearly it is, because it has worked for her. So it made me actually reconsider my education. Actually, like, yes, because I've just been a TikTok person. Yeah, do TikTok. But actually, it might be worth spending more time doing some actually community engagement and networking, etc. in the places where your audience might hang out, and that might also help with growth. I've also noticed that streamers basically live a life that isn't free of stress. Finding a balance is difficult. Like, of course it is. You're doing so many fucking things. And that is like super important for me, like, to address that, and to part of the education that I want to create further down the line is basically just taking life principles and concepts and applying them to streaming, so that people don't burn out and people create something that is sustainable. Because I see it far too many times, and I was one of these people where streamers are just they're so focused on streaming, they neglect the rest of their life, and they then build this lifestyle with streaming in it that's just so unsustainable. It's just so unsustainable, because you're just chasing your dream, and you're chasing numbers, and you want to just spend all your time with the community. And yeah, that's all great and good, but like you can't do this forever. Like, you're just not gonna last. And so I'm super passionate about trying to figure out how I can create some content tailored to streamers that makes them really think about the decisions they're making in terms of their time on different things and streaming, etc. Oh, and one last thing. They're also, sorry, I should have said this earlier. There is also like a growing desire to do more on YouTube, I think. Like, I think there are lots of streamers like, yeah, they want to do YouTube and they're just dabbling in it. And I think that's probably something that comes later on down the line in terms of like your generic streamer career. I always feel like it's, the thing is you start streaming, you get a feel for streaming, you like it. You then realize you need to start creating TikToks. You then start creating TikToks. You then grow your stream. Oh, this is great. I'm going to do stream and TikTok. You start growing more. And then when you then become more established and kind of got your feet on the ground a bit more, you're like, okay, now I need to like pivot to do more YouTube long form potentially for sustainability. So I think a lot of the streamers that I spoke to are at that stage where they've done TikTok. The streamers, they've got their stream, they've got their community, and now they're exploring some other content kind of platforms to try and actually diversify themselves, which is what I'm always promoting as well. But yeah, it's that I've realized it probably takes a little bit of time in terms of a streamer's journey for them to get to that point. So what improvements can I make? I think I want to go a little bit more deeper on some questions that I'm asking, do a bit more research on the stream. I've been fortunate that a lot of streamers that I've interviewed I already knew, so it's a bit easier for me to ask specific questions. But as I come into the future, I will probably be interviewing people that I don't really know that well, and so I need to be doing more research. I know that, and actually I think that will, even if I do know the streamer, if I do more research, I think I'll be able to ask better, more interesting questions. I feel like towards the end of the season, I was maybe asking the same questions too much, it felt a little bit generic. I'm sure it probably didn't to most people, but to me it felt like I was just not like a broken record, but I felt like I needed to mix it up a bit. So I'm actually glad that I'm taking a little bit of break and thinking about how I can actually ask some better questions. I've got some ideas as well about like what to do on the stream. I'm thinking about maybe going and finding some like old clips of the person that I'm interviewing and maybe bringing them onto the stream and talking about that, maybe having a bit more interactivity rather than just like a face-to-face conversation. Why don't we pull some clips into the podcast and talk about some clips or talk about some content that they've produced, etc. So it gives people a little bit more of visuals to look at, make it more engaging, etc. Because the podcasts are quite long. Moving on to that, podcasts are quite long. I'm considering I don't know whether to move the podcast to an hour. I'm trying to think like, okay, well, at the moment they've averaged about an hour and a half. Is that too long? I don't think that someone's more likely to watch an hour podcast over an hour and a half podcast. I think they're both very, very long. So like, if I'm going to do an hour long podcast, like why? If I'm going to like try and set a time to it, why? Or like I have at the moment, I've just not been setting a time to it and we just run it. So I'm just, trying to figure out like actually maybe if I'd be more concise with my questions, there's less waffling. Like I could actually fit it in to an hour, and actually we don't need to talk about stuff that I've already talked about in other interviews, and actually the questions can be more unique. So yeah, I'm still thinking about that. I'm not too sure yet. But I think all in all, I'm very happy with how it's gone. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning so much. It's like nice to just meet lots of new people, and people recognize the podcast as something that is valuable. I know it's valuable, which is like why I continue to want to do it. And I think I'm just gonna, I guess, just take baby steps, keep making small progress as we go along. Because again, I've got so much to do, so like I can't just be expecting to make leaps and bounds like every month or so. Like I'm happy to just keep tapping away, keep going up the ladder in terms of the size of the streamer. Like obviously I want to interview streamers of all sizes, but like I want to interview some streamers that are huge, of course, like that one day, right. We got to work towards something. But yeah, I'm happy, still going strong. And yeah, I hope the video I'm not sure what sort of value this video is looking to give or who it's aimed at, but I like doing these videos. I just wanted to do it, get my thoughts on the table. For anyone that's been kind of a consistent viewer of the podcast, they might find this useful just to understand like what's going into it. If maybe you've considered doing one yourself, good luck. And so yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to just DM me on Twitter if you're looking to start a podcast or want any help. So yeah, other than that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and have a great week. Bye bye.